Hi there, I'm Christy. Welcome to my channel. I am from Northern Alberta, Canada in growing zone 2B. I wanted to kind of give some insight to a question that keeps coming up and give my viewpoint of it with all of the new subscribers. Welcome, by the way. I'm kind of a little bit overwhelmed that there's been so many people interested in the content that I've been putting out there, where I was just putting it out there so I kind of remembered what I did and keep myself motivated. But you guys are awesome, and I really appreciate your interaction. I really appreciate that you're here. I really enjoy the fact that you are interested in what I have to say and what I'm sharing and what I'm doing. So thank you, thank you, thank you. It means a lot. So one of the things that a lot of people I've noticed are experiencing some cold weather and haven't had the experience, or are questioning, like, how do you function in these cold climates? How do you function with these conditions? What do you do? What do you do to keep warm? So today, currently, I think it's minus 38 or something like that. Here's the thing there. Anyway, it is a little chilly, considering a couple days ago we had melting temperatures where we were at like +1 or +2 for a moment in the day, but it was right around -3 degrees Celsius, which is really warm. We were out in t-shirts, considering we were at -40 for just about 3 weeks straight. So, it's yo-yoing back and forth. And I know many of you are experiencing this as well. So one of the things though that happened yesterday is our school buses were canceled in the morning, and we had a really big winter storm, and it's really typical for the buses to be canceled in the morning, but then they're going in the afternoon once the roads have been cleared and sanded and salted. But yesterday the storm just kept going, and so the buses were canceled in the afternoon as well. So Chaz, my stepson, he was able to go in the morning with his dad, but then he let me know that the buses were canceled, so I had to leave during the process of my canning salsa. Well, the school buses were canceled, so I have to go get Chaz. Molly's the co-pilot. Hope we don't get stuck. Not fun. Salsa making was underway, but I had to shut it all down because Chaz is stranded at school. So on we go. One thing, I didn't get to video that, which really was kind of crappy, that I was in the process of doing the things, and so I just got in a hurry and I didn't video the salsa making because I cleared out a lot of stuff out of my pantry, which I was hoping to share with you, and what I do to basically how I test my acidity and adjust it, and what I do to make sure it's water bath canning safe. So my methods, I was going to share that with you, and how I used freeze-dried ingredients in the canning process, but it didn't work because I had to go and pick him up. So while I was waiting for Chaz at school, I seen a couple of kids leaving the school with no winter gear. Now, yesterday was a bus day. It was 30 below, wind chills. It was flipping cold in the wind. There was snow, snow was blowing sideways at points. The highways were slippery. There's parts in it you probably, little sections of the highway, you probably couldn't stand up on the highway. It was really, really icy. The roads yesterday were, for the most part, good, but it was just hit and miss. And here's these kids leaving the school because they walked to school and they were walking home. And they didn't have any winter boots. They were wearing flats, shoes with no socks, and just a sweater and no toque or no mitts, nothing. Just, I was very surprised to see some people were dressing this way. And it come to the realization, it got me thinking about some things that I've experienced in my lifetime when it comes to cold climate and cold temperatures. Now, personally, I know 2 people who have lost their life due to freezing to death. 2 people that were, very familiar with the climate. One of them was coming home from work, and it was a really bad blizzard. And what happened is she turned onto a road she was going to go to a friend's house because the roads were too bad. So she was going to wait the storm out at her friend's house, who she had been to multiple times, because she was about halfway home and she didn't know if she could make it home from work in the conditions, and her car, something was going on with her car. So her friend didn't know because she didn't have a cell phone or anything like that. Nobody knew. They just knew she left work and she didn't come home. So unfortunately, they found her the next day, and she was about, I think it was like 500 meters away from her friend's house, hiding behind a round bale with the snow blown over her, and she had passed away because of she had frozen to death. And she was in a uniform. She had a winter jacket, she had mitts, she had toque, she had winter boots on, and she was probably out there for like 40 minutes in the storm. And she was just such a frail, not frail, but a tiny little woman. And it didn't take long. They estimated that she was out in the conditions for that long. And it was just simply, she couldn't get to the house. She couldn't see it. Her car got stuck. She drove off the road and got stuck when she was going to her friend's house, and her friend didn't know she was there. It was a complete whiteout. There was a blizzard. Couldn't see. And yesterday's conditions reminded me exactly of that day that happened to her. And the other friend, what happened to her, she was at a bonspiel. And what happened is she was drinking. She was a smoker. And so she had gone outside to have a smoke and just cool off and have, a reset after dancing and having a good time. And she just, no coat, nothing. She just went out and she sat down on a bleacher. And what happened is it was approximately 35 or 40 below. And for a person who hasn't been drinking, you could sneak out for 10 minutes and not wear a coat and a jacket if you're used to these conditions, and it's not a big deal. But when you have alcohol in your system, what happened is I don't think she really fell asleep or passed out, but what it sounded as happened is that the alcohol and the cold and the temperature, she just couldn't function to get back in. And they found her several days covered in snow and frost in a bleacher sitting next to the entrance of the building, because they couldn't see her because she had been blown over with snow. It made me think about how a lot of people have how there's a lot of things that people don't think about when it comes to extreme temperatures, like footwear and having the proper equipment, having the proper tools, how to stay safe in these situations, how to know what to do in these situations. And so today I wanted to reflect a little bit on some of the gear that I use. So this morning, today is we have a 41 below wind chill, and a wind chill is how fast you will get hypothermia and freeze or get frostbitten. So negative 41 is the more accurate temperature that I need to pay attention to when I'm outside doing these chores, because when the wind chill is what is going to affect me more than the actual ambient temperature, because the wind chill is going to be the accurate tell of how quickly I can potentially freeze to death. And so when I look at the forecast and I know I'm going to be outside, I dress accordingly and appropriately based on that wind chill factor. And so today the wind chill was negative 41 degrees Celsius, which is this in Fahrenheit. So today I went out and I was outside for approximately 1 hour and 45 minutes it took me today to do the chores in negative 41 degrees Celsius wind chills. So that might seem like impossible to some of you right now, and you're thinking, whoa, does she have antifreeze in her veins? And, sometimes I wonder, because I don't know how I can, function, but you just do. And I know I wouldn't be out there doing what I'm doing with just the average gear. So I wanted to share with you some of the things that I use and how I function doing chores and taking care of the animals, and what I know about working in these conditions for proper PPE kind of thing is the proper word. So one of the things that I know is that I like to dress in lots of layers. Layers are something like if you just have one big fluffy coat and a t-shirt underneath, you could be fine. But I feel like the best way to amplify, like if you don't have a really thick thermal jacket, you could use multiple layers, and the air in between the layers is what's going to keep you warmer than the actual layer itself. So the more air you can create, the more bubbles, I guess, that you can create between you and the outside, mostly the outside humidity, the better. But you still want something breathable. So if you start sweating underneath all of your layers and then that cold penetrates that sweat, you're in trouble. That's where you're going to be in trouble. You need to stay dry, you need to stay cool but warm. And that sounds really weird, but it's the humidity and the moisture that will create the most conflict for a person when you're working out in these conditions. So I like to use lots of layers. I use, usually I'll do like a legging and a jogging pant and ski pants, but each layer is quite light. So I have 3 light layers instead of 1 thick one, if that makes sense. That's something I find is really important because I want to be able to move around and have a lot of movement, but through like multiple layers is better than one. Multiple like thin layers is better than 1 thick layer, if that makes any sense. And you learn that from when you look at snow, the more compact it is, like if I was to put a thermometer down in the ground under like 4 feet of snow, as long as it wasn't compacted down, that ground underneath would actually be quite warm. There'd be a significant difference from the surface area, because that snow, the air in the snow, the air pockets in the snow are insulators, and it keeps it protected. So, the same concept can apply when you're dressing yourself, is keeping yourself insulated with layers of air pockets. And that seems to be very, very helpful just by having multiple, like 3 shirts on is not unusual for me in these conditions, or 2 shirts and a jacket and stuff like that. Tight clothes will make you cold. Like, I try not to wear clothes that are really tight. So that's something that can be a conflict and make you colder, because you want air circulation, you want ventilation, and that's going to keep you warmer. Like, the worst thing for me is my feet. My feet get really super cold very, very easily. And so I could work outside and stay nice and toasty warm, but it's my feet that get cold and make me unable to function. So today I was outside for close to 2 hours and my feet did not get cold. And the reason they did not get cold is because I invested in some good boots. Now, the boots I use are an insulated bog boot. So they're weather resistant, they're waterproof, but they also have enough space in the calf area where I can buckle it if I want to put like layers of, if I have like 3 layers of pants on, I can shove those pants down in that pant leg and not compress it or make that tight. Like, I have movement still, so I'm still staying warm throughout my leg, my calf, my foot, everything, and so I can alter that, and they have those as options as well for the calf size and such. We all 3 of my family members wear bogs, And I have gardening bogs that I use as well that are really good for summertime. I use them early spring, all of gardening season. So I switch from my winter bogs to my summer bogs, and that's what I wear for footwear. So, but in the winter time, my feet generally do not get cold. I do not wear, my feet do not get cold as long as there's space inside the boot. If I put like 3 layers of socks on and then put my boot on and it's tight, my feet will get cold in 10 minutes. But if I create space inside of my boot, so my boot is not tight fitting, it is quite loose. I can move my foot around in there and have lots of space. I'll put a wool sock on and then I'll put that boot on, and that boot will hold that temperature optimally, so I don't get too sweaty of feet and I don't get cold feet, and I'm able to function for several hours in extreme cold temperatures because of having good boots. I have used the cheap $30 boots before, and that's how I got frostbite really badly. So I won't even travel without my good boots. So if I need to go for a drive somewhere, I won't travel without them. So that's something to consider if you're curious of knowing what are some things that you should have to function if you have to be in cold temperatures. A lot of you are experiencing temperatures that you are really not used to experiencing, and you still have to go do chores. You still have to take care of your livestock. You still have to go, to work. Those are real things that you still have to do. And so these are tools that I use to stay safe, to stay comfortable, and to still be able to function and get work done without being overdressed. The other thing that I find is heat socks. When I come in from doing chores, a lot of the times I go and put on heat socks if my feet get a little bit of a chill. I also use a toque that is a heat toque. It traps in the heat, and that is something that I tend to use. My hands, I find that anything tight fitting is not good, and I find that layering the hands is also a really effective way if you have to be outside for a long time. So myself, I will put like 2 layers of gloves, just layers, lots and lots of layers, and making sure you take breaks. After every 15 minutes, you're putting yourself at risk in those temperatures. And so just having a good gauge of how long you've been outside, really paying attention to that is really important. The other thing is some people like to put lots of lotion on to make a barrier, or Vaseline, like we've talked about in other videos. So you can make a barrier so that cold can't penetrate any humidity you have. So it kind of like creates an oil, just like a bird would naturally. Like a bird will make oil to protect it from getting frostbitten, because like you see a little chickadee outside. I seen one this morning. Their like legs are the size of toothpicks and they don't freeze. And it's because they produce this oil that prevents that frost from penetrating and killing, like freezing them. So we have to learn from nature. Just learning from nature is really, really key when it comes to surviving in these kind of climates and thriving in these kind of climates. So there's that. So I just wanted to share some of this insight with you, because it really inspired me seeing what was going on yesterday, and seeing a lot of your comments, and seeing a lot of people on YouTube, other content creators, are saying like they have some challenging weather for them. And I have not seen it. I don't recall ever having conditions like this. Our weather is getting more cold in the winter and more hot in the summer. It is extreme weather conditions, and there's no denying it. I mean, we went literally, I went from, in the last how many years, we went from one summer to being evacuated because there was a fire right there, literally right there. And we were evacuated for over a week. To being stuck at home in quarantine, to being stuck at home from extreme conditions, to from having floods and gardens flooding out and drowning out, to grasshoppers wiping them out, and extreme droughts. It's just been so intense. We've had multiple times in the last few years, we've been the coldest place on earth. At least once a winter for the last few winters running, and that's not something to be proud of. I don't think. It's not normal. It's not normal. So I mean, I hope that my information helps you in some way, because I don't know how to survive in the heat, and I know many of you don't know how to function in the cold. So boy, aren't we a pair. Because I tell you, sometimes just the teeniest little information is really, really helpful. I wanted to share something too about that I learned, and I didn't want to share this until I actually kind of had more information. I wanted to share something that I didn't know. I learned this recently. With this last blast of cold weather that we've had, I've actually lost a bird. I lost a guinea fowl that was one of the Keats. It was one of the family that my guinea fowl hen had hatched. I wanted to know what happened. Like, I couldn't figure out how come this bird, because it was, you know, they're healthy. They weren't cold. Why did it die? It didn't seem sick. And I learned something. So I had made a very, very big mistake. When we had the minus 45 degree wind chills previous to the last we had, I actually tried to lock the birds in so they wouldn't go outside, thinking like I'm gonna block that wind chill from coming in. And that was my main intention, was not to keep them locked in, but to block the wind out from blowing through. And because it was the way that the wind was blowing that was concerning to me. Well, what happened is that bird freaked out. It didn't want to be outside or inside. It wanted to go outside. And I think it was because the humidity had gotten too high throughout the nights with all the birds inside, and it was getting too warm. Even though it was 45 below outside, inside that coop with all those birds breathing and stuff, it does get humid even with the window open. So I think it was freaking out, wanting to go outside, and it kept trying to fly up and hitting the window because the window is open to allow ventilation. And somehow this bird got little cuts on its leg, and it was bleeding, and it was a white bird, so it had blood kind of on it. And I don't know if it was the window that cut it, because there was some blood on the window, or if it was the other birds like scratched it when they were kind of making a kerfuffle in there trying to get out the window. But it had these little tiny cuts on it, like not gashes or wounds. It was just little, kind of like a paper cut, like little cuts that bled a little bit but looked awful because it was on a white bird and it was a white window. So they were just little micro cuts. And I didn't think anything of it. I'm like, okay, you're fine. It's not, I'll keep an eye on it if it's going to get infected, whatever. Didn't bother it, didn't catch it to stress it out. I could see it clearly because I could see what was wrong with the bird. And it was just little micro cuts from what I'd seen going on, because I seen it happen. And so it was fine. 2 days after, I think it was, that happened, or a couple days after, it had died. And what I learned is it actually was 45 below-ish, I think it was, wind chill or something like that. And what I learned is that birds, to regulate their temperature, their circulation moves through their legs to regulate their body heat. And that, they regulate their body heat through the circulation that, goes through their legs, and it's how they stay warm. What happened is because of those little micro cuts, there was blood clots in the cuts, and those little tiny micro cuts caused enough disruption to their circulation to regulate themselves and keep themselves warm that it literally caused them to freeze. And I was just like devastated when I found, like, what? Like a little micro cuts on a bird's legs can cause it to freeze to death, but blood clots do cause conflicts in a bird to regulate its body heat. It's not a big deal if it's minus 20 degrees Celsius or if it's minus 30 degrees Celsius, but as soon as you get to that negative 40 degrees Celsius and colder, then it becomes a problem. Those little micro cuts create enough conflict in those tiny little legs that do cause some disturbances in how they're able to regulate their body temperature. So none of the other ones had any little micro cuts on their legs, but that one did. And like I said, I don't know if it was from the window, I don't know if it was from the other birds, but I learned my lesson. I learned my lesson. Don't lock them up. Don't lock them in and force them to stay in a place where that if they're trying to get out and get into an area where there's more ventilation, I need to let these birds do that. They're not like chickens. The guinea fowl are very different. They are a wild animal. They're not domesticated like chicken. And so I've learned my lesson. Actually, one of them spent the night in a tree last night because it refused to go inside. I put it inside and it ran straight back out. And it's in a tree still right now. It will not go in and it will not stay in because of the humidity. It's not handling the humidity. And it just keeps flying higher and higher because it knows what it needs. And so I'm not going to argue with that bird. It's doing fine. It's doing just fine. So lessons learned, you guys, lessons learned. Anyways, I hope you enjoy my little chit chat about this. The pantry challenge has been going okay for me here. I am definitely, I canned some salsa yesterday. I took a bunch of stuff out of my freezer. That was my plan, was to share that with you today. Unfortunately, all the things happened. I will be, today is a curling day. So I have to pick Chaz up after school, and then I have to, because he has basketball and then he goes to curling with his dad tonight. So in between I have to make a quick supper. So I'm not sure what I'm gonna do yet. Yesterday, my day was, we had a cheat day. I asked Tyson to be in charge of supper because by the time I got home from picking Chaz up, I was in the middle of canning. So I had 2 canners going. And so my kitchen was occupied. When I disinfect my jars, I put my jars in the oven and disinfect them that way. So my oven was busy, my counter space were busy, my stove was busy. The only thing I had was the air fryer. So I asked him to be in charge with that so I can get my canning done. And so he picked up some pizzas and wings. And so I didn't have to cook yesterday. So I have no content to show you with what I've made. But otherwise, it is going great. I think that this week I do really have to sit down. I have to start getting some seeds started, like my celery and my onions and, some of my peppers. And the reason I'm starting them now is because my goal will be to put them in the greenhouse in April when I have my flowers for the flower farm showing up. And I am planning to do a grow list of what varieties I'm growing, because remember, I have a 100-day growing season. So if I can grow stuff in 100 days here, you could maximize, if you're kind of going with what information I have, you might be able to maximize your growing even in the warmer climates that you're in. If you have a longer season, you may be able to get a lot of stuff grown if you're using some of my varieties, the ones that I'm using, stuff like that. So just some insight of something to look forward to if you want to stick around for that content. Anyways, thank you guys so much for being here. I've been rambling for a while and I think I'm warm. I'm gonna go stoke the fires and put some wood on it and go check those birds' water and make sure everyone's doing okay. And maybe clean up my mess in the kitchen from last night and figure out what I'm making for dinner and hope my truck starts so I can go get Chaz. That's the other thing. My truck wasn't plugged in last night and it turned 41 below. So now let's hope it starts. I might have to get another boost. Back to this again. We just got out of the deep freeze, which by the way, in a couple of days, it's supposed to be 0 degrees Celsius. I'll see you guys soon. Thanks for watching. Bye for now. Take care. It's so pretty. It's 40 below. It's so pretty. We have a full moon and a pink sky. I wish the video would pick it up for you guys. So pretty. The snow is so cool.